So it's the decades after World War II, and you're in the K-12 public school system, right? You come in from recess, your teacher rolls a cart into the room with a 16mm projector on it, a couple round canisters with films in it underneath. Yay, it's film day. Awesome. Yeah. In this section, we're going to look at what today we call the propaganda films of the 50s. At the time, they were called educational films that were shown in schools, elementary school, junior high, and high school at the time. Where a lot of these projectors came from at these schools was through the military. During and immediately after World War II, the military distributed a lot of these projectors to schools for the purpose of showing sex ed films that had started to be shown in schools at the time, usually around 4th or 5th grade. So your school would get a projector, get the sex ed film to show, and you could keep the projector and show other movies on it as well. And both the government and Hollywood produced a lot of short flicks to be shown in classrooms. And a lot of it is, actually most of it, is what we would call now socialization. It was ways to behave. Even the sex ed films only had part of it about reproduction. The rest of it was how to act, how boys and girls should treat each other, how they should interact, dating advice, hygiene advice. Very little, actually, of the sex ed films involved reproduction itself. So a lot of these were just establishing norms of behavior that, again, that broad cultural umbrella expected you to follow. Let's take a look at a couple of these.
I don't have any fun at parties. Kids just aren't friendly.
Oh, Bill, that might be your fault.
I doubt it.
Maybe it's just that you don't know how to use social courtesy.
Social what?
Social courtesy, Bill.
Oh, that's old-fashioned.
What's old-fashioned about having fun at parties?
What's having fun at parties got to do with social courtesy?
If you give me a chance, I'll show you.
Go ahead.
All right. First, let's get you to Carol's house to call for her.
What? Well, okay.
Now go ahead and ring the doorbell. I'll stick around and help you out.
Wow. Hey, look, what's so special about this? I don't have to be courteous just to call for my date, do I?
Hi, Bill. What a costume. I'm nearly ready. Do you want to come in for a minute?
Nearly, huh? I'll wait out here. Don't take all night.
Hold it. Let's take a picture of this situation. Now look at that, Bill. Here Carol was trying to be friendly. And you said people aren't friendly. No, Bill, you discourage others when they want to be friendly. You'd better back up and start all over again. I don't think Carol's going to want to go out with you again unless you...
Huh?
Did I touch a sore spot, Bill? Well, maybe you'd better try to be more friendly this time.
Hi, Bill. Oh, that's quite a costume. I'm nearly ready. Do you want to come in for a minute?
Thanks, Carol. But I guess I'll wait out here, if you don't mind.
Well, all right. I won't be long.
How am I doing?
Better. But you might have gone inside as she asked.
Well, I wanted to check with you. Hey, say, wait a minute. Is this social courtesy, what I've been doing?
It's part of social courtesy. Just simple friendliness.
Here I am.
Let me help.
Thank you. Can we go? This will be a lot of fun tonight. It's all clean. And you go on and enjoy the party. Come with me, Carol.
All right, Bill, you're at the party. Now let's see you try some more social courtesy. I'll be right here to help you.
Thanks.
Oh, hiya, Bill. Hey, you know what?
I don't know. No, cut it out. For Pete's sake, the way you go. Hey, look, I finally got my food. What do you say, girl?
But hello, Bill. How are you?
Okay, I guess.
Bill, aren't you going to learn? You're being very rude to Martha's mother. She thinks you're very impolite. Look at you sprawled out in that chair. You're supposed to rise when an adult speaks to you. Everybody knows that.
Supposed to rise when an adult comes into the room. Yeah, you notice these films are delivering more than just being polite. You're getting some norms there too. Gender norms, we're going to see later, respecting authority in general.
Now, let's back up and try it again and see if you can be polite. Oh, come on, Bill, sit up. That's a chair, not a bed. That's better. Watch it now. Here she comes.
Well, hello, Bill. How are you?
Fine, thanks. I didn't expect to see you in costume. That's pretty clever.
Well, thank you. You did pretty well yourself.
Well, thanks. You like it?
I certainly do. There's Ellen. I want to see her. Have fun.
Well, now, wasn't that better? Look at the effect of a little politeness. You've had a very pleasant talk with Martha's mother.
Oh, she seemed friendlier than usual.
That's because you were friendly and courteous. Now, look over to your left. Martha's introducing a stranger to the group. She'll be here soon. Suppose you had to make the introductions. How would you do it?
Me? Oh, well, I'm not going to. That's Martha's job.
Well, we can fix that up pretty easily. All it takes is a little switch. And now you have to do the introducing.
Martha, Hank.
Hold it, Bill. Not so good. Let's go back to the beginning and let Martha show you how.
Bill, I'd like to meet Hank Vatner. This is Bill Brandt.
Hi.
I'm glad to know you.
Hank is the fellow who won the city math contest last week. Except for that, he's normal.
I say, you could help me with my algebra, couldn't you?
Well, I could try.
Well, not now. This is a party, remember? Besides, I want you to meet my mother.
All right.
Goodbye, Bill.
See you later, Bill.
Yeah, sure thing, Hank.
You see, a good introduction makes meeting people simpler and more pleasant.
Sure, you're right. But there's so much to learn how to do.
Sure, there's a lot to learn, but it's worth it. And learning is easy. One way is by watching others.
Huh. Oh, here, Carol. It's about time, too. How long does it take to take your coat off?
Easy, Bill. Is it going to help any if you complain?
No.
All right. Be friendly, thoughtful. Join in the fun. You'll get along. I'll see you at refreshment time.
Huh?
Hi, Bill.
Oh, hi, Carol. Oh, come on, let's join the gang.
Swell. How about a Virginia Rio?
Let's clean up. Let's...
What kind of party is this? Where's the booze?
Bill, how are you getting along?
All right.
How about some refreshments? Aren't you hungry?
It's a good idea.
You could get some for Carol, too.
That is a good idea.
Are you talking to yourself?
Oh, no, I was just thinking. I'll get you some food.
Why, thank you, Bill. Oh, dear.
I'm sorry, Joan.
Oh, it was all my fault. I didn't watch where I was going.
You didn't watch where you were going. Here, I'll get you some more.
Oh, you don't have to, Bill.
It's all right. You want some
No.
popcorn? Okay.
Thank you.
It's all right.
Now you're getting the idea, Bill. Be friendly. Be thoughtful. What do you think of social courtesy now?
I guess it makes being with people a lot more enjoyable for me.
And more enjoyable for them, too. You've made a good impression on people here. Listen.
Isn't that the boy who used to be so rude?
Why, yes.
You hear that? She says you're not as rude as you used to be.
What do you know?
And look at Carol.
Bill has changed so. Why, he's actually nice now. I'm glad I came with him, really.
Those few changes made a big difference, didn't they?
Yes, social courtesy does make a difference. And it's easy to learn. You can learn by watching others. And you can even get a book on courtesy from the library.
I might at that. Sorry I took so long. I had an accident.
Thank you. Phil, I'm having some of the kids over to my house next Saturday night. I'd like to have you come, too.
Oh, I don't... Sure. Sure, I'd like to come.
Good.
Thanks for asking me. Social courtesy does pay, doesn't it? Thanks.
Okay, we're going to see another one here, and this is about being emotionally prepared for military service. Now, a lot of people don't think about it today because we've had several decades of an all-volunteer army. But up through the 60s, into the early 70s, we did have a military draft. And when you turned 18, any young man could get called into military service, whether they wanted to or not. So this is kind of that. But keep your eye open for things other than being emotionally prepared for the military, because all of these films laid down other norms and other socialized expectations as far as the socialization of how you should behave or how the culture expected you to behave.
When you're in high school, you don't have too much trouble getting along. Oh, you have your ups and downs. Things happen. But you know pretty well what you can and can't do. There isn't very much about your life at school that's too difficult, emotionally. You know pretty well what to expect. Yes, most of the time, high school is a pretty comfortable place compared to this. When you're in service, you're going to have to find out again what you can and can't do. You won't know just what to expect. You'll have lots of adjustments to make. Sure, a situation like this is rough. But what are you going to do? You can't cut class. And you can't quit. And you can't talk back. Or if you do, this man just hasn't been able to adjust himself to taking orders. That's a pretty important part of military life, you know. It's one of the big adjustments you're going to have to make. Have you ever fired a rifle? For some people, it's fun. But fun isn't what you're training for in service. This is business. The business of life or death. Military training is education for war. Most of us hate war and the very idea of combat and violence. That's another big adjustment you'll have to make. Have you ever been homesick? Maybe you thought you never would be. When was the last time you cried? You'll say you gotta stop this. You're a man now, not a kid. But you can't help missing Mom and Dad, and your friends back home, and the things you were used to back in high school where life was pretty comfortable. That's another adjustment you're going to have to make. In time, this fellow will be okay. But when he entered service, he wasn't ready emotionally for the big change. How about you? Are you going to be ready when the time comes for you to meet these new situations? Will you be ready to obey orders and comply with military discipline? Will you be ready to take your part in education for war? Will you be ready to stand on your own, away from your family and friends? How about it? Can you make these adjustments without an emotional upset? Starting now, there's a way for you to get all this in perspective. Take stock of yourself. Think.
Well, how do I stack up emotionally? How about last week? Jim was giving out free advice about how to improve my grip. I didn't take it very well. I don't like criticism. How about taking orders? What about the time I was all dressed up for that big date? So, the car wasn't washed. Well, I should have seen to it. Why blame Dad? Who's going to do my work in service? The other day, Jane was playing dress-up with Mother's shoes and my baseball cap. Lose my temper easily, don't I? And then there was the accident. Boy, did I get worked up. Real panicky. Let's face it, I sure need a lot of self-discipline before I enter service.
That's right. Take stock of yourself, and then take action. You'll need time, but you can help yourself. An assignment is going up on the board. Orders, from the teacher to the class. But you don't much like taking orders. It annoys you when people tell you what to do or how to do something. All right. Now you can slip by most of the orders you get. But do you want to go on that way? Later on, taking orders will be expected of you, demanded of you. So now's the time to start practicing.
Self-discipline, taking orders. And we're going to see this applied to a lot of different spheres, not just in the military, but you need to learn to take orders from parents, from teachers, from your boss, from the church, basically any individual institution of authority, you should take orders from them, and that'll prepare you for military service.
Consider all your assignments as orders, and make it your business to follow them. Try to understand the real purpose and what your part is, and why the orders have to be followed to achieve that purpose. If you consider suggestions, advice, assignments as orders now, you'll adjust easier later on. Another part of getting ready for military discipline is developing self-discipline. If you usually duck your responsibilities, it'll pay you to start changing your ways. If there's a job to be done, get it started. Take on responsibility for getting certain things done around the house, at school, in your community. Even if it's a job you don't like, Stick it out. Learn to take it. As long as it's your job, do it. Do your best at the jobs you take on, and take on new jobs. Look for things that you can be responsible for. Discipline yourself. Plan to do things, then do them. Later on, you'll have plenty of responsibilities that you'll have to manage. Learning to accept them now will help you over a big hurdle. Later on, you'll find it easier, too, if you've had some experience now being away from home. Have you ever gone off on a summer job with your friends and spent a night in the city on the way? You had a lot of problems, didn't you? Just being on your own. Being limited to the amount of money you could spend. Having to make all your own decisions. Having to make all your own arrangements. While you were away, your folks missed you, sure. But both they and you feel more confident now about that time later on, when you'll be away from home for a much longer period. Maybe you're thinking and worrying about combat, the violence and the dangers. Well, think about the men you know who have been through military service. Even though they served, many of them in wartime, few saw combat. Few had to use their combat training to defend their own lives, and very few of them were wounded. Think about it. Take the problem to church if you need help. Talk it over there. Get yourself straightened out. Yes, get yourself ready emotionally, so that when you're away from home, you can adjust to the new situation. Get yourself ready to take your part in education for war. And get ready for discipline and the military situation in general. Learn how to take it, for life in the service can be rough. Or it can be an interesting, new experience. Remember, others have been in service and made out all right. In fact, many millions of fellows like you have faced the same problems and met them successfully. And you can too, even better than they have, if you start now to get ready emotionally for what lies ahead.
The men you know who have been through it, statistically they're correct, and most of the people in service never saw combat, but they are playing down the injuries there, especially having come out of World War II and the Korean conflict, in which you would know a lot of people. Obviously, we're not talking about PTSD at this point either, since we didn't have a category for it. It was still shell shock or battle fatigue or something else. So those were still going on there. But you can see a lot of other norms laid in there. Being ready for the military, well, do your chores at home. Self-discipline, responsibility. You have responsibilities and you should do them because that prepares you for this thing later. Keep in mind these films were shown in schools, some of them in elementary school, into what was called at the time junior high. This one in particular would have been shown in high schools at the time. So we talked earlier about the sex ed films, about how they lay down more than just the changes in the body that happen at puberty and reproduction. We're not going to watch any of those in its entirety, but let's just grab some clips here of the stuff from those films that is not sex education, where those supposed sex ed films were laying down other norms and expectations as well.
Molly lives at home with her father, her mother, and her older sister, Jeannie.
that you, Molly?
Yes, Mom.
Hi. What kind of a day did you have today?
Mom, guess what?
I don't know. What?
Mom, I started my first period.
Well, what do you know? Come on, sit down. Tell me about it. How do you feel?
Kind of funny like. I was hoping it would start soon. But it seems like I've forgotten everything you've told me.
All right. I tell you what we'll do. Tonight will be mother and daughter conference night. And if you'll give me a hand with supper, we'll get started that much earlier.
Okay, I'll wash up and be right down.
Ooh, we got a bunch of norms being reestablished here, as the notes pointed out. When it says nuclear family at the beginning, that just means mom and dad living with the kids in the household, and that's it. That's all you see in there. Now today, people will tell you, well, that's how it always was. That was the tradition back then, and the family unit all fell apart. That's actually not true. The growth of the nuclear family in the 50s was a change from how it had been prior to World War II. That's why you see so many news articles and commentaries from the 50s talking about the collapse of family values. What was more common prior to World War II was extended family, meaning it wouldn't just be parents and children in the household. You're likely to have grandparents in the household also living with you for many different reasons, especially during the Great Depression. You were also more likely to have aunts and uncles very close by, so you would be raised with your cousins just about as closely as you're raised with your siblings. You'd spend as much time with your cousins as you did with your siblings, and maybe as much time as with friends. Notice in this one, there are no other family members in here. This is the nuclear family. Dad is outside mowing the lawn. Outside chores are for dad. Mom is the happy housewife inside cooking. And in spite of daughter having her first menstrual cycle, you still need to go wash up and come help with dinner, because that's what we trained girls to do. Girls would be encouraged to help with the household tasks. If they had a boy in the family, he would be out with dad helping out, mowing the lawn, helping in the garage with the car. Another thing going on here, which is a lot more subtle, is that you had two parents and two children. Now, for the purposes of this, they had two daughters, because parts of it were not showing here just for the sake of time. The older sister served as an educational model for the younger sister as she came through this. We still had large families and still do today, but that socialized norm that was trying to be put onto you was two parents, two children, kind of a population control type of issue there. All right, let's head on, see more of this.
And it won't be long at all before you're quite used to it. You see, honey, menstruation is perfectly normal. It happens every month. Sit up, dear.
But why each month, Mom?
Oh, it's just part of being a woman, I guess. And eventually your body will set up its own regular time. Please sit up, Molly.
Oh, Mom, I'm comfortable.
Well, if you sit and stand straight, that'll give the organs inside your body room to function better. And that'll make you feel better.
Mom, can I go swimming with Peggy tomorrow after school?
I don't think I would, Molly.
But I'd be home by 5:30.
No, it's not a good idea the first 2 or 3 days of your period. You might get chilled and catch cold.
Oh, that's right. Peggy, of course I can't go swimming. You know I've got the curse.
Good heavens, Molly, you're growing like a weed. I'm going to have to let that hem down again. Come on, I'll do it right now.
Okay.
Ooh, appropriate dress length. You can almost see her knees. Better be getting that hem down, because we have a norm of what is an appropriate amount of skin to show. By the 50s, that had been shrinking. Keep in mind, in the early 20th century, dresses went all the way to the floor. You didn't show any leg at all. Through the 20s, 30s, and 40s, that hemline started to come up. But in the 50s, we tried to push the idea again of that hemline coming back down a bit and not showing too much skin.
What are you two up to?
Oh, how were the fights, Jim?
No, not bad.
Something wrong with our aerial, though. We ought to be getting a better picture than that. What was all the talk about in here? Is this a private conference?
No, I don't think so. Do you, Molly?
No, I guess not. You tell her, Mom.
Proper posture, sit up straight. Here's the reasons for it, right? Dad has been watching the fights, right? Boxing. In the 50s especially, boxing was the big masculine sport. So that was part of the male role expectation. You're going to watch boxing. That's just what you do. You're also going to be really into baseball. Also notice Dad was alone in another room watching boxing while Mom sat in the living room doing either sewing, knitting, crochet, whatever she was doing in there at the time. And there's another thing coming in here, again, that we wouldn't notice today because it's so common. That is Dad talking about how their reception should be better, right? In the 50s, we did not have cable television. You got television through an antenna on your roof. In 1950, only 20% of households in the U.S. had televisions. By 1960, just 10 years later, 90% of households had televisions. This film was done right in the middle of the 50s when there was a big push to get more TVs into households. And socialization and information distribution is a big part of that. Radio served that purpose prior to World War II, but television was an extra boost because you had images that could go along with it. Keep in mind, what we are showing here to people is supposed to be the typical middle-class household. So if you feel yourself as typical middle-class household, here's all the things you should have and all the things you should be doing. So Dad should be doing his chores outside. Mom should be in the kitchen. Daughters should be helping with the kitchen tasks. Dad is watching boxing. And as a middle-class family, you have a television. It's what you're supposed to have. It was a great form of information distribution at that time. So you were encouraged to do that. Let's go on with some more here.
Well, Jim, Molly's growing up. She's having her first menstrual period.
What? Already? Oh, but Alice, I thought... Well, I mean, after all, she's only...
Daddy, don't be so silly. I'm not a baby anymore.
I know, dear, but, well... No. No, honey, I guess you aren't.
Not only is Dad shown smoking a pipe, but he apparently just threw the match out on the floor. Hot match. Hope they don't have carpet, but in the 50s, carpet would have been an expectation in there as well. Dad's also having a reaction here because Dad has been the protector and controller and had absolute control over the children and what they do. Adolescence is a point where part of your male role is to have a little problem with losing that degree of control. Now you're expected to be standing outside chopping wood or cleaning your shotgun when boys come over to visit your daughters.
Growing up is fun, but some of the things Molly used to do seem a little silly now. Sometimes she gets all mixed up just thinking about it. She's changing from a child into an adult, and it's a little confusing at times.
Miss Jensen, is it true that people can tell when you're menstruating?
No, it isn't. But you should be more careful than ever about personal cleanliness and daintiness. Change your underwear more often, and be sure and use a deodorant. And pay more attention to your hair and your nails, and plan to wear your prettiest dress. In other words, be your most attractive self.
Girls' appearance and aroma, right? We're pushing early on that your appearance is a key part of your value and your self-esteem as a female in our culture. We do not push that to the same extent on boys in that regard. So even here, we're pushing that one.
Miss Jensen, what about dancing? Can you when you're menstruating?
Yes, you can, with moderation. In fact, you can do most of the things you usually do. You can bathe or shower as long as you use warm water. And you can wash your hair if you're sure to dry it quickly. And you can swim if you wait until after 2 or 3 days after the beginning of your period. And you can go to dances and picnics. But it's not a very good idea to skate, or ride horseback, or play fast games like volleyball and basketball, or do strenuous dancing like square dancing, or anything that bounces you around a lot. Soon, Molly will be a young woman like her Jeannie, having dates, going to dances in lovely romantic dresses, and making new and important friends. There are so many wonderful things to look forward to. Growing up, it's an exciting time.
So hopefully you see here, we cut out the actual sex ed parts of it where they were describing reproduction, and I actually didn't have to cut very much out for those purposes. A lot of it was showing the norms, the broad cultural norms. Here's a middle-class family. Here's what we expect a middle-class family to be today. Today as being the 1950s. You did see some shifts in that if you watch other sex ed films that were done in the 60s and 70s. You sometimes see an almost desperate attempt to pull in some norms and hang on to them, but at the same time, some of them recognize changes in that. Okay, so we're ready to come back into modern times. Head on with our next section.